The battlefield stretched across the scorched plains of Kepler to be, littered with the twisted remains of human machinery. Smoke rose from 3 massive mechs, their hulls split open like broken eggs, sparks still dancing from severed power cables. At the center of the destruction stood Commander Kayla Voss, her pale green skin gleaming with perspiration, red curls escaping from her tactical headband as she surveyed her handiwork. Her plasma rifle hummed with residual energy, the weapons, alien design pulsing with bioluminescent veins that matched the fierce determination. In her amber eyes, the Dravari warrior had single-handedly turned the tide of this skirmish, her superior reflexes and centuries of combat training making the human pilots look like children playing with toys. Target neutralized, she spoke into her calm, her voice carrying the melodic yet commanding tone typical of her species. Human forces retreating on Vector 7-9. But as Kayla moved toward the extraction point, something felt wrong. The electromagnetic signature in the air had shifted, creating an almost imperceptible hum that made her weapon feel sluggish in her grip. Her enhanced senses, honed through generations of Dravari evolution, detected the subtle trap too late. From behind the wreckage of the nearest mech emerged Lieutenant Ethan Cross, his standard-issue rifle modified with components that definitely weren't military standard. His brown hair was disheveled, dirt streaked across his angular face, but his green eyes held a calculating intelligence that Kayla had learned to recognize in worthy opponents. Commander Voss, he called out, his voice steady despite the tremor. In his hands, your weapons are disabled. Surrender. And I give you my word, you'll be treated with honor. Kayla's laugh was sharp and bitter. Honor? From a human? She raised her plasma rifle, squeezing the trigger, but only a pathetic whine emerged from the weapon. The electromagnetic pulse he'd triggered had disrupted her entire arsenal. Clever little engineer, she snarled, dropping the useless weapon and drawing the curved blade from her hip. But I am Dravari. We do not surrender. Ethan's modified rifle hummed to life, but instead of the lethal plasma discharge she expected, it fired a containment net that wrapped around her with surprising gentleness. The mesh conducted a low-level electrical current not enough to harm her, but sufficient to disrupt her enhanced nervous system. As Kayla collapsed to her knees, fury burning in her chest, she glared up at her captor. Why? She demanded. Why? Not grant me an honorable death. Ethan approached cautiously, his expression conflicted. Because I'm not a killer by nature, Commander. I'm an engineer who got drafted into this war. He knelt beside her, his movements respectful despite her bound state. And because Earth High Command has special plans for you. What plans? Kayla's voice was low, dangerous. They want to invoke the old Dravari tradition, the claiming right. Ethan's cheeks flushed as he spoke. Since I brought you down, they're making me your claimant. Kayla's amber eyes widened with shock and rage. The claiming tradition was ancient, born from times when Dravari warriors would capture enemies and hold them until honor debts were paid. It was sacred, binding, and utterly humiliating when invoked by an outsider. You dare, she whispered, her voice trembling with barely contained fury. You pathetic human whelp think you can claim a daughter of the Dravari bloodlines? Ethan stood, offering his hand to help her up. I think I just did, Commander, and I think we're both going to have to figure out what that means. The human detention facility was nothing like what Kayla had expected. Instead of the cramped, degrading cell she'd prepared herself for, she found herself in a converted officer's quarters with a proper bed, a small workspace, and even a viewport showing the alien landscape beyond. The irony wasn't lost on her. She'd been given better accommodations as a prisoner than many warriors received in active service. Ethan entered carrying a tray of food, his movements cautious but not fearful. He'd traded his combat gear for simple fatigues, and Kayla noted how the civilian clothes made him look younger, less threatening. It annoyed her that she found this somehow appealing. I wasn't sure what Dravari ate, he said, setting the tray on the small table. I had the mess cook prepare something based on the nutritional data we have on your species. Kayla examined the meal with suspicious amber eyes. The protein looked properly prepared. The vegetables were ones compatible with her physiology, and There were even small additions that suggested research into Dravari dietary preferences. This wasn't standard prisoner fare. "Why?" she asked, her voice sharp with confusion and lingering anger. "Why what? Why treat me like this? I destroyed your forces. I killed humans. Yet you feed me as if I were a guest." She stood abruptly, her hands clenched into fists. "Do you mock me with this false kindness?" Ethan's expression remained steady. "I'm treating you the way I'd want to be treated if our positions were reversed. It's not mockery, Commander, it's basic decency. Kayla repeated the word like it tasted foreign on her tongue. "Your species wages war across the galaxy, yet you speak of decency. Not all of us wanted this war." Ethan replied quietly. "Some of us were pulled into it because we had skills they needed. I was designing civilian infrastructure before they drafted me." He gestured toward the small workspace. "I noticed some of the equipment here is damaged. If you're interested, you're welcome to work on it. I thought maybe it would help pass the time." Kayla stared at him in disbelief. "You would trust me with your technology? You're honor-bound by the claiming tradition not to harm me while in my custody. Besides," he smiled slightly, "I'm curious to see how Dravari engineering compares to ours." Later that evening, Kayla found herself bent over a complex circuit board, her fingers moving with practiced precision as she rewired the damaged components. The work was soothing, familiar, and she'd almost forgotten about her captor until she felt his presence behind her. "Fascinating," Ethan murmured, watching her work. "You're using the power distribution grid as a secondary processing matrix. That's brilliant." Despite herself, Kayla felt a flush of pride at the compliment. "Dravari technology is integrated, not compartmentalized like yours. Every component serves multiple functions. Could you show me?" He pulled up a chair beside her, careful to maintain respectful distance. "I mean, if you don't mind sharing." For the next hour, Kayla found herself explaining Dravari engineering principles to her captor, surprised by his quick understanding and insightful questions. When she reached for a tool at the same moment he did, their hands brushed, and she felt an unexpected jolt of electricity that had nothing to do with the circuits they were working on. "Commander," Ethan said softly, his eyes meeting hers, "you're bleeding." Kayla looked down to see that her earlier struggle had reopened a wound on her forearm. It wasn't serious, but thin green blood was seeping through her uniform. "It's nothing," she said, pulling her arm away. "Please, let me help." Ethan's voice was gentle but firm. "I have medical training." Before she could protest, he was returning with a first aid kit. His touch was careful, professional, as he cleaned and dressed the wound. But there was something in the way his fingers lingered on her skin, the concentration in his face as he worked, that made Kayla's pulse quicken in a way that had nothing to do with pain. "There," he said, securing the bandage. "It should heal quickly with your physiology." Their faces were close now, close enough that she could see the flecks of gold in his green eyes, could feel the warmth radiating from his human skin. For a moment, the space between them seemed charged with possibility. Then Kayla pulled back sharply, her warrior's instincts reasserting themselves. "Do not mistake my cooperation for weakness, human. I am still your prisoner, nothing more." 3 weeks into her captivity, Kayla had grown restless. The respectful treatment, the engaging conversations about technology, even the comfortable quarters, none of it changed the fact that she was a warrior bred for combat, now caged like some exotic pet. The tension had been building in her muscles, in her spirit, until she could bear it no longer. "I challenge you," she announced when Ethan entered with her morning meal. He paused, setting down the tray carefully. "Challenge me. To what?" "Combat. Single combat, as is the right of any claimed warrior." Kayla's amber eyes blazed with determination. "You claim to have bested me through cleverness, but any fool can set a trap. Prove you're worthy of the claiming right in honest battle." Ethan considered this, his expression thoughtful rather than dismissive. "What are the terms?" "Hand-to-hand combat. No weapons, no technology. Just skill against skill." She stepped closer, her voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "Unless the great Lieutenant Cross fears facing a mere prisoner." A slow smile spread across Ethan's face. "I accept, but I have one condition: we fight on equal terms. If I win, You acknowledge that I earned the right to claim you. If you win, I'll petition command to have you transferred to a standard detention facility." The proposition surprised her. You would give up your prize so easily, if that's what you truly want. Yes, but Commander, his green eyes met hers with unexpected intensity. I don't think that's what you want anymore. An hour later, they faced each other in the facility's gymnasium, both dressed in simple training clothes. Kayla had expected to dominate quickly. Dravari were naturally stronger and faster than humans, but as they circled each other, she began to realize that Ethan moved with a fluid grace that spoke of serious martial training. "Where did you learn to fight?" she asked, testing his defenses with a quick jab. "Engineering school had an active martial arts program," he replied, deflecting her strike and countering with surprising speed. Amazing how much physics applies to combat. Their fight became a dance of skill and strategy. Kayla's superior strength and reflexes were matched by Ethan's technical precision and tactical thinking. He used her momentum against her, turned her attacks into opportunities, fought with the same analytical mind that had trapped her on the battlefield. As they grappled, pressed close together, Kayla became acutely aware of the heat radiating from his body, the way his muscles moved beneath his skin, the focused intensity in his eyes. When he managed to pin her briefly, his weight pressing her to the mat, she felt her breath catch for reasons that had nothing to do with exertion. "Yield?" he asked softly, his face inches from hers. Instead of answering, she used a Dravari technique to reverse their positions, rolling until she straddled him, her hands pinning his wrists to the floor. "Never," she breathed, but the word came out, husky, laden with meaning beyond the fight. They stayed frozen like that for a heartbeat, both breathing hard, the air between them electric with tension. Then Kayla released him and rolled away, her heart pounding. "A draw," she declared. Coming to her feet, "Agreed," Ethan said, though his voice was rougher than usual. That evening, as they worked together on another repair project, the dynamic between them had shifted again. The fight had proven something to both of them, that they were more evenly matched than either had realized. "You fight well for a human," Kayla admitted grudgingly. "You fight well for anyone," Ethan replied. "I've studied the reports from the battlefield. What you did to those mechs, it was extraordinary. It was duty," she said. But she felt pleased by his recognition. "No," Ethan shook his head. "It was artistry. You don't just fight, Commander, you create poetry with violence." The unexpected compliment hit her like a physical blow. No one had ever described her combat skills as art before. Among the Dravari, she was simply another warrior, skilled, yes, but not unique. To hear this human, this engineer soldier, see something beautiful in her deadliest abilities. "Ethan," she said, his name falling from her lips for the first time without his rank. "Yes? Why did you really choose non-lethal methods to capture me? Your commanders would have preferred me dead." He was quiet for a long moment, his hands stilling on the circuit board. "Because when I watched you fight, I saw someone magnificent, someone who deserved better than dying in the mud of an alien world for a war neither of us chose." He looked up at her. "I saw someone worth saving." Before she could stop herself, before her warrior's training could reassert control, Kayla reached out and cupped his face in her hand. His skin was warm, slightly rough with stubble, utterly alien and yet somehow familiar. "You are not what I expected," she whispered. "Neither are you," he replied, leaning into her touch. When he kissed her, it was gentle at first, almost hesitant, but when she responded, her lips parting under his, the kiss deepened into something hungry and desperate. She tasted the salt of sweat from their earlier fight, felt the rapid pulse in his throat where her thumb rested against his skin. They broke apart breathlessly, staring at each other in shock at what had just happened. "Kayla," Ethan began. "No," she said quickly, stepping back. "This changes nothing. You are still my captor. I am still your prisoner." The message arrived on a standard military channel, crackling through the communication array with the weight of galactic politics behind it. Ethan read it twice, his face growing pale as the implications sank in. The war was over. A ceasefire had been declared. All prisoners were to be repatriated immediately. Kayla was free to go. He found her in the workshop, where she'd spent most of her time over the past month, her red curls catching the light as she bent over another complex repair. She looked up as he entered, and something in his expression made her set down her tools. "What is it?" she asked. "The war's over." He said simply, "You're free to leave. There's a transport coming for you tomorrow." Kayla stared at him for a long moment, her amber eyes unreadable. "I see. I won't try to stop you," Ethan continued, his voice carefully neutral. "You've honored the claiming tradition for longer than required. You've more than paid any debt." "Have I?" Kayla stood slowly, moving toward him with that fluid grace that had always captivated him. "And what of you, Lieutenant Cross? Are you so eager to be rid of your prize?" Ethan's jaw tightened. "You were never a prize, Kayla. You are." He struggled for the words. "You're the most remarkable person I've ever met. You deserve to go home to your people, to the life you had before all this." "Do I?" She was close now, close, enough that he could smell the subtle spice of her alien skin, see the golden flecks in her eyes. "And what if I no longer know what that life was? What if months in captivity have changed me in ways I never expected?" "Kayla," his voice was rough with emotion. "What if," she continued, her hand coming up to rest against his chest, "what if I've found something here worth more than the honor of my ancestors?" The space between them crackled with tension. For weeks, they'd danced around this attraction, this impossible connection that had grown between captor and prisoner. Now, with her freedom restored, the last barriers were crumbling. "I can't ask you to stay," Ethan whispered. "I won't be the human who keeps the great Commander Voss from her destiny. You're not keeping me." Kayla said, her fingers curling into the fabric of his shirt. "I'm choosing to stay. I'm choosing you." When their lips met this time, there was no hesitation, no pulling back. Ethan's arms came around her, pulling her against him as if he could somehow merge their very beings. Kayla's hands tangled in his hair, and she made a soft sound of need that sent fire racing through his veins. "Are you certain?" he asked against her lips. "Once the transport leaves without you, there's no going back. Your people will consider you lost. Let them." Kayla breathed. "I've found something more valuable than honor, more precious than duty." She pulled back to look into his eyes. "I've found love." They made love that night with a desperate passion, born of weeks of denial, and the knowledge that this was their choice, freely made. Ethan worshipped her alien beauty with hands that trembled with reverence, tracing the patterns of bioluminescence that flickered beneath her pale green skin. When she was aroused, Kayla claimed him with a fierce tenderness that spoke of her warriors, heart surrendering to something stronger than conquest. In the soft afterglow, as they lay entwined in the narrow bed, Kayla traced lazy patterns on Ethan's chest. "Your people will not approve," she said quietly. "Some won't," he agreed, "but others will understand. And honestly, Kayla, I don't care what they think. You're worth any price. The Dravari have a saying," she murmured against his skin. "The heart that chooses freely is stronger than the one that follows duty." I never understood it before. And now, Kayla raised her head to look at him, her eyes bright with love and determination. "Now I know that choosing you is the first truly free decision I've ever made. Not as a commander, not as a daughter of the Dravari bloodlines, but as myself, as Kayla." The next morning, they stood together at the landing pad as the Dravari transport prepared to depart. Through the viewports, Kayla could see her former comrades watching her with expressions ranging from confusion to outright disgust. She raised her chin proudly, her hand firmly clasped in Ethan's. "Let them look," she said. "Let them see that Commander Kayla Voss chooses her own fate," as the transport lifted off without her, carrying away her old life forever. Kayla felt no regret. She had found something worth more than all the honor and glory of her warrior heritage. She had found a partner who saw her not as a prize to be claimed, but as an equal to be cherished. 6 months after the war's end, the Grand Assembly Hall on Kepler Station buzzed with tension as representatives from both Earth and the Dravari Confederacy gathered for the formal peace ceremony. The occasion was historic, the first official diplomatic contact between the species since the ceasefire. What no one expected was that it would also witness the most controversial declaration in interstellar relations. Kayla stood at Ethan's side in the staging area, her military dress uniform, replaced by flowing robes that blended Dravari tradition with human fashion. The pale green fabric complemented her skin tone perfectly, while the earth blue accents spoke of her chosen allegiance. Her red curls were woven with small silver ornaments, a sign of bonding in Dravari culture. "You don't have to do this," Ethan said quietly, adjusting his formal diplomatic attire. "We could have stayed on the colony worlds, built a quiet life away from all this political theater." Kayla's amber eyes were fierce with determination. "No, if we hide, we accomplish nothing. If I'm to be the first Dravari to choose a human mate, then let it be done in the full light of history." "Mate?" Ethan raised an eyebrow, a smile tugging at his lips despite the gravity of the moment. "Is that not the human term for a life partner?" Kayla asked with mock innocence. "I've been studying your customs quite intensively." Before Ethan could respond, an aide approached them. "Lieutenant Cross, Commander Voss, they're ready for you." The assembly hall fell silent as they entered together. On one side sat the Earth delegation, their faces ranging from curious to concerned. On the other side, the Dravari representatives watched with expressions of barely contained outrage. At the center, the joint diplomatic corps waited with obvious nervousness. Admiral Hassan, representing Earth Command, spoke first. "We are gathered here to formalize the peace between our species and to address the unusual situation that has arisen regarding Commander Voss's status." High Counselor Thex of the Dravari delegation rose, his ceremonial armor gleaming. "The warrior once known as Kayla Voss has brought shame upon her bloodline and her people. She has violated sacred traditions and dishonored the claiming right by submitting to human weakness." Kayla stepped forward, her voice carrying clearly through the hall. "I stand before you not in shame, but in pride. I have not dishonored the claiming tradition, I have transformed it." Murmurs rippled through both delegations. This was not the expected script. The ancient claiming right was born from conquest. Kayla continued, her words measured and powerful. It spoke of winners and losers, of the strong dominating the weak. But what if we were wrong? What if true strength lies not in domination, but in the choice to love? She turned to face the Dravari delegation directly. "You call me weak for choosing a human mate. I call myself strong for choosing love over duty, partnership over possession. Lieutenant Cross did not break me, he freed me to become more than I ever was as merely a warrior." High Counselor Thex's voice was cold. "You speak of love as if it excuses betrayal. I speak of love as the foundation for a new kind of strength." Kayla replied, "One that could bridge the gap between our species instead of widening it." Ethan stepped forward, his hand finding Kayla's. "If I may address the assembly," he said, "I never sought to claim Commander Voss as a prize or trophy. I sought to protect her, to learn from her, and eventually to love her, not as her superior, but as her equal." Admiral Hassan leaned forward. "Lieutenant Cross, are you prepared to formalize this relationship under both human and Dravari law?" "I am," Ethan replied without hesitation. Kayla's voice rang out strong and clear. "I, Kayla Voss, daughter of the Crimson Blade lineage, choose to bond with Ethan Cross of Earth, not as his claimed prisoner, not as his conquest, but as his equal partner. I redefine the claiming tradition from one of dominance to one of mutual choice." She raised their joined hands high. "Let this be recorded, that love conquered where war failed, that understanding bridged what hatred divided, and that the strongest bonds are those freely chosen." The hall erupted in chaos. Some delegates shouted in outrage, others in approval. But through it all, Kayla and Ethan stood united, their love a beacon of possibility in a galaxy learning to hope again. Later that evening, in the privacy of their quarters aboard the station, they held each other close as the stars wheeled past their viewport. The political ramifications of their declaration would take years to fully unfold, but they had taken the first step toward a future where love transcended species, where choice mattered more than tradition. "Do you regret it?" Ethan asked, his fingers tracing the bioluminescent patterns that glowed softly beneath Kayla's skin. "Never," she replied, pressing closer to him. "You showed me that being claimed didn't make me weak, it made me free. Free to choose my own destiny, my own love, my own future. And what future do you choose?" he asked. Kayla smiled, her amber eyes bright with love and infinite possibility. One where a Dravari warrior and a human engineer prove that the strongest forces in the universe aren't weapons or traditions, they're hope, understanding, and love. As they made love under the distant stars, their bodies moving together in perfect harmony, they knew they had created something unprecedented, a love that would echo through history, inspiring others to choose connection over conflict, understanding over fear. Their story had begun with capture and claiming, but it would be remembered as the tale of two souls who chose each other freely, transforming an ancient tradition of dominance into a new legacy of love.